Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today with a 2-for-1 Skyrim Impressions video, and this game has been re-released so many times that I'm no longer talking about the title itself and the content within it, but rather just how the port is, and I find that kind of funny. So at Bethesda's fall/holiday showcase, I had the chance to go hands-on with the PS VR version of Skyrim VR, and then obviously Skyrim on the Switch is, well, Skyrim on the Switch, duh. We're gonna start off with talking about Skyrim on the Nintendo Switch because I was most excited for that one. The game overall looked okay for the hardware it is on. I think PC players will scoff at the graphics on the Nintendo Switch, especially if you're really accustomed to all your mods and so on, then you're gonna probably double take at what you see on screen. But for me, as someone who loves handheld gaming and gaming on the go, I was fascinated that they managed to fit a game as big as Skyrim onto the Nintendo Switch, and that is coming from me who personally does play BGS games exclusively on the PC. I mean, we are looking at hundreds of hours of content because Elder Scrolls Skyrim on the Switch does come with all of its DLC as well, so there's a lot of stuff to do in this game already. We're looking at hundreds of hours of content here. Pretty impressive stuff to fit on the Switch. It doesn't come without its sacrifices, and while it's apparent visually, I think it's passable. The biggest standout to me was the audio aspect. There is heavy audio compression all the way across the board on this game. When you're talking to NPCs, it stands out like a sore thumb, similar to audio coming out of a Game Boy Advanced SP. Obviously that's a hyperbole, but you get the point on how bad I thought it was, where sound effects were like like that, like it just didn't sound good at all, and actually drew me completely out of the experience, where I was really feeling it, and then I heard people start talking around me and I started swinging my weapons and it just felt really off. It was this crackly audio that I wasn't a big fan of. It was not the headphones. I tested it on multiple systems, different pairs of headphones, same thing, it was the game itself. And as someone who is huge on sound in video games, this may not be a big deal for you, but this is something that would nag me to death in an entire playthrough. So I've definitely kind of pivoted on my stance for Skyrim on the Switch. I am still excited to play on the go. I'm sure I will get used to the audio hopefully, but it definitely left a sour taste in my mouth. Overall though, from a technical aspect, this is a huge game on the Switch. You're definitely going to be getting your money's worth in the terms of content, and I'm looking forward to trying it out with the full product. Skyrim VR is the other one I had the chance to look at, and this was the one that surprised me the most out of everything at the event itself. VR is one of those things that when you talk about it, it doesn't really sell the product. You just have to put on the headset and try it yourself. So I apologize if some of the stuff I say doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but trust me when I say when you throw on the VR headset, it's a whole different ball game. Sadly, I could not capture direct footage of Skyrim VR, so you have the great pleasure of looking at me being a tall, awkward idiot waving around a bunch of colorful wands with the TV in the background. And then when we see actual footage of Skyrim on screen, that is from my normal Skyrim save file at home. With that all clarified, the first thing I noticed in Skyrim VR was there was this true scale that you don't register in your head as much without VR goggles. So when I entered Bleak Falls Barrow for the 4,000th time in Skyrim, I actually was surprised for the first time since my initial playthrough as I looked up, and it really looked like the ceiling was way above me. It felt like I was truly in the cavern. Like I said, I do apologize if this sounds a bit silly, but it adds to that immersion factor where I was thinking, hey, I could actually get into this. Skyrim's biggest weakness is hands down its combat, and there are some fundamental changes in the Skyrim VR version, which I think actually better the combat. Swords, you swing around, which I think can be a little more immersive rather than the typical trigger. But when you're truly interacting with the sword, yes, it's a little bit of the VR craze, but it's still a lot more exciting than pressing the button itself. What was the best surprise was when I took out the bow and arrow, and now I actually had the arrow in my hand, and you had to knock the arrow into your bow itself, pull back, press a button, and then release the button to shoot the arrow, and it made archery in Skyrim a absolute blast. It was so much fun. And with VR, obviously you're getting that up close and personal look, so it's not just about the scale of the caverns that I was able to take in, but also when I got up close to a skeever, I was actually, I guess, creeped out. Like when it got really close to me, they looked way bigger than anything I had seen from the multiple times I had played Skyrim on all these different systems. So I was thrown off, slightly intimidated despite the this being a genuinely easy creature to kill, and it's because I was immersed. I was really there with the goggles, looking around with my head, and my brain was telling me and making me feel like I was really in the game itself. So yes, it's the same old Skyrim gameplay, and also I want to pass on the information that Bethesda was telling me. A lot of people were concerned that this is kind of a tourist version of Skyrim where there's no HUD, there's no interaction with the NPCs, there's no looting, and Bethesda was saying to myself and other YouTubers that they are having this in the full product, it's just not available in the demo. Keep that in mind while we keep our eyes on this title as we near the launch date for this game. Hopefully the HUD is better than the Fallout 4 VR version I tried out, where it was really a pain in the ass to get things going, and that's partially because of the paddles. For the HTC Vive, they were a little frustrating for me and difficult to navigate, and the buttons overall weren't as responsive, so I do wonder if that's why they have been hidden in so many demos. I feel like that's a fundamental part of a Bethesda Game Studios game. Time will tell, but that is what I experienced on the Skyrim side of things at the Bethesda Fall Showcase. Out of the two, I really enjoyed Skyrim VR the most. It genuinely was a title that made me think, I'm going to consider VR now, because it is getting to that point in support where maybe if there's enough games out there, Skyrim VR would be on my list of games to pick up because of the way it played a little bit different fundamentally. It was a lot more immersive, and it was interesting seeing those creatures that we've seen time and time again in a new light. And I'm personally all about immersion in my Bethesda games, so you know what? I enjoyed it. Nothing that you should rush out to the store for, but overall, I was definitely impressed with it. Skyrim on the Switch, I think most fans will be okay with. I just had a problem with the audio. So that'll wrap it up for me, folks. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook. Those links are in the description down below, along with my Patreon. Do consider supporting that as it fuels all the content we create here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.